Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and him, Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire, who I actually saw in person yesterday, sort of, for a Zoom chat. It was a lovely Zoom chat, despite his openly provocative wearing of a Brighton shirt. And for some reason, Kieran, I woke up this morning thinking I must apply for an American Express card. Which made Ali laugh a lot. Ali said, "You don't have to one. You have to pay back every month, don't you?" So, I get it. It's Newsday, Kieran. It was lovely to see you yesterday.
It was great. Yes,
we were discussing plans with somebody who I think was producer guy.
You've never seen him, have you?
Hard to say.
I don't think I have either.
He blacks his face out. They do what he used to do to Jerry Adams back in the old days. He change his voice and disguises his face so we don't know who he is. Newsday, Kieran. The first one is unfortunately topical. I suppose most news stories are, but this one is the Premier League and the EFL are cancelling their broadcast contracts in Russia. So who are those contracts with, Kieran, and what are the financial ramifications?
Well, they are with some of the major state broadcasters. Unfortunately, in Russia, everything is now controlled by the state, as we have seen that independent journalism has effectively been closed down over the course of the last 7 days. Yeah. In terms of the value of these contracts, they're not huge. We're certainly not huge from the Premier League's point of view. It's £8 million a year. That contrasts with sort of £500 million you'll be picking up from Scandinavia, and the new US deal is fantastic. So the Premier League can take it, but clearly that they've made that decision on the back of talking to club owners at a recent meeting. The EFL deal, again, this isn't a criticism of the EFL, but there's not a lot of interest in Barnsley versus Luton in Russia. So it wasn't a lucrative deal to begin with, but I think the EFL have made their decision, and we fully understand the reasons why that is the case. I think this is just football has clearly decided that it doesn't want to give any form of solace to Vladimir Putin's regime. If by providing entertainment that's doing it, then they've decided to cut off the pipes.
Yeah, it's a big debate in the entertainment world as well. It's interesting is that I'm accompanying a friend in a few weeks' time to see Swan Lake, and they announced yesterday that the Russian conductor is no longer welcome. But as she pointed out, it's by Tchaikovsky. So I think it's absolutely right what the Premier League and the EFL have done in this occasion, but I do feel genuinely sorry for some of the Russian individuals who are opposed to this war, who are being punished as well as Putin. Putin won't give a flying monkeys whether a Russian conductor is not conducting at Covent Garden or not. It's not going to stop until he stops, unfortunately. I didn't think I'd be reading this one out so quickly, Kieran, but European Super League proposals could be about to make a comeback.
Yes. At the Financial Times Football Business Conference last week, which always gets some fantastic big hitters, they managed to have both Severin, who's the head of UEFA, and Andrea Agnelli, who is Juventus's owner in effect, and also one of the architects of Super League. I think Severin is godfather to one of Agnelli's children. So there is a fantastic soap opera to be written on the basis of this. Severin's calling Agnelli a snake. For the way that he conducted himself during the initial version of Super League, but Agnelli says it's a wonderful idea. If the clubs have all signed up to it, nobody's actually no longer a shareholder in the Super League company, and he says it's going to be the saviour of football. Now, what exactly are the proposals? They're saying now that it won't be guaranteed participation for the clubs, and I think that was one of the things which upset people. But if it does go through, it will have such a negative impact upon the domestic game, because the people behind Super League wanted to reduce the Premier League to 18 teams, potentially 16 teams if it really got their way. And it would give the clubs who are participating, even if it's on merit, such a financial advantage. Because if you're now, if let's face it, we support Brighton and Palace. We know we ain't going to be in the Super League, but we're more than happy. But I get to see my team play 38 matches a season. Now, in order to appease an Italian billionaire, we're going to see 4 fewer fixtures. I'm going, well, okay, what's in it for us, and also what's in it for those clubs who do have sort of owners who are perhaps willing to bankroll their clubs to the next level. And we're not making value judgments here, but that's the intention at Villa, at Newcastle, potentially with SF49ers, West Ham. They're going to lose 2 home matches as well, and therefore they're going to have less income, which means trying to keep up with the Joneses, who are the people who are in the Super League, is going to be financially impossible, especially in a financial fair play environment. So it might not formally be a closed shop, but it will be a closed shop because they'll just make it impossible to compete financially. The argument put forward by Agnelli is that UEFA is both a competition organizer and organises the sort of the finances of the game and distributes the money and so on. And I think it was interesting. Steve Parish spoke at the conference as well, and he was effectively saying that UEFA and the Super League are one. One's just got a slightly better public relations image, in the sense that it looks as if we could have this crazy situation where there's 6 clubs from the Premier League competing in the Champions League, and let's face it, I think we know who those 6 clubs are going to be. And then, as I said before, it just becomes reinforced. The financial benefits of being in the Champions League are so significant that in order to compete for transfers and wages, it makes it very difficult.
Kieran, this is an extraneous news item. Are you happy with me throwing something in for you to improv here?
Oh yeah.
Well, it's just you mentioned the Financial Times and you mentioned Steve Parish. And the Financial Times last night reporting that Josh Harris, who's one of the minority owners at Palace, is potentially preparing a bid for Chelsea. He's a very wealthy man. I didn't realise he was quite in that league, but he's very wealthy. Presumably that means if he were to successfully take control of Chelsea, he would have to, I think the Financial Times used the word, divest himself of any interest in Palace as well.
Yeah, I think that I will check the small print of the Premier League handbook, which I do quite on a regular basis, as you can imagine, given the excitement of my life. But I think you cannot own 10% in one club and have a controlling interest in another. Okay. It looks like he'd probably have to sell his shares. There's also talk about Jamie Rubin, who owns 10% of Newcastle, being one of the interested parties in Chelsea as well. And there's lots of people throwing their hats in the ring via newspapers. And as we've known historically, there's talking the talk and walking the walk, and there's a long difference in between those, especially that Chelsea realistically is going to cost, I estimate, in the region of 1.5 to 2 billion. And then on top of that, you've got the stadium issue for another billion. So it's not going to be a cheap option, which will restrict the number of people involved. There's supposed to be a Turkish billionaire interested as well. So, this story is going to run and run. I expect it might appear on the pod on a few more occasions over the course of the summer.
Who, Josh Harris or the story?
Chelsea. Sorry, yes.
Yeah, it's. I think one or two journalists have definitely been listening to the pod because quite a few news outlets have been reporting your theory from a week ago that it would cost another £1 billion and 10 years to sort out any legal issues and the rebuilding of Stamford Bridge. So I find it difficult to understand what's in it because the broadcasting deal isn't going to get that much better, you think, over the next 10 years. So what's in it for US investors? Is it just owning the kudos of owning a club that might be in the European Super League?
If they are private equity investors, then no. They are purely in it from a monetary point of view. If you take a look at how often do the Glazers attend Old Trafford, how often has John Henry been to watch matches at Anfield, and so on. So these people are first of all they're smart. That you don't become a billionaire through being an idiot as a rule. There's the odd exception, but there is very much a focus as far as American investors are concerned in making a financial return from what they see as part of the entertainment industry. And I think there is a culture clash between the ethos of most American owners and the ethos of what we have here and what we believe is football is broadly based on romance and sporting merit and hope. And we know that the reality is different, but it's that's what keeps us going. But what we could have now is pretty much we're moving towards a critical mass of American ownership in the Premier League. And remember, you only need 14 votes to change the rules. So, what's going to happen over the course of the next few years, I think will be intriguing. And I'm not sure, as you and I, as two old South London lags, we're going to be particularly happy with what we're going to see, because it's not going to be based on what's best for the fans, I can assure you.
Well, my prediction is, Kieran, and this is something we've spoken about in the past, only as a theory, but as you say, as each year goes by, the theory becomes even more possible. I think if there was a situation where 14 American club owners decided that there would be no relegation from the Premier League, I think crowds would go down by 50% overnight, if not more. I think that would be. I think the demonstrations we saw against the Super League would be as nothing against demonstrations for that sort of change. But that's a long way off, Kieran. But talking of being old and South London lags, this news is exciting, Kieran, because the UK and Ireland are set to be the hosts of the 2028 European Championships, and when you get to be as old as we are, Kieran,
we are.
There aren't that many.
How old am I?
There aren't that many tournaments left. Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of about supporting a World Cup every 2 years. We might cram a few more in, but potentially to have a Euros in the UK and Ireland in 2028 would be fantastic.
Yes, so this was a story. It's a story from the Mail, and I retweeted it, and I did get some interesting feedback from some senior people in football to say it's not quite as clear, crystal cut as they're making it out to be. It does look that as if there were three potential hosts in 2028, one of which was Russia, which I think we can confidently say is unlikely to get many votes. Be about as popular as the UK at Eurovision in terms of getting votes. Secondly, there is Turkey. And I think the issue from a Turkish perspective is that as the 2028 tournament is likely to feature 32 teams, you're probably going to need 11 or 12 stadiums in order to host all of the matches. Now, that could involve quite a lot of infrastructure costs in terms of, Turkey's got some fantastic stadiums. Has it got 11 or 12, which would be suitable to meet UEFA's needs? I'm not so certain. Whereas if we look at the proposals for England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, the Republic, and Wales, they have those stadiums. I think Windsor Park might need some form of dispensation or expansion because it only holds 18,000. I think they'll be willing to do that. There's been talk about the likes of Murrayfield hosting a football match, which to me intuitively isn't right. Yeah. But Scotland, it's going to be Glasgow and Edinburgh. So Murrayfield would be the logical place in Scotland, and of course there's plenty of places in England as well, which already you've got to have a minimum capacity of 30,000, and there's an awful lot of grounds there. So I think the English FA, the Scottish FA, with the partners in Wales, Northern Ireland, the Republic, are in a very strong position, and also from UEFA's point of view, the 2020 championships were a financial disaster because it took place behind closed doors. So they're looking to recoup. UEFA is looking to recoup as much money as possible with a couple of flagship tournaments. I'm old enough to remember to go. I went to Austria, went to Portugal. There were Poland and Ukraine not all that long ago. And, look at what we're doing now. England will sell. England, Scotland, the countries involved will sell out every single match. So UEFA likes the idea of that. That's why they're delighted that the 2024 tournament is taking place in Germany, because big country, big football culture, lots of money to be made. I'll certainly be across. I think a Price of Football tour of Germany in 2024 summer is something we need to organise. And given our organisational skills, we probably need to start thinking about it now.
We're having enough trouble organising getting a dog to Wimbledon for 2 weeks' time. Let's not start talking about. I think Turkey for me would be a good choice as well, though. I mean, it's a football mad country.
It is,
and it's a very. I've not actually been, unfortunately, but everybody I speak to tells me it's a wonderful place to go. And also, there does come a time when I think new countries need to have these tournaments. And so I don't think any of us would mind. Obviously, I'd rather it was on my doorstep, but I don't think any of us would mind if it was in Turkey. On a slightly more parochial level, Sheffield Wednesday, it turns out, are paying annual rent of quite a lot of money for Hillsborough, Kieran, aren't they?
Yes. This is as always involving Sheffield Wednesday and finances. It's intriguing, fascinating, and complex, shall we say? So Sheffield Wednesday sold Hillsborough to another company owned by Delphine Chancery, the club owner, and booked a profit. And when they did that, I think that was in 2018, that was at the time within the financial fair play rules. Any profits from sales of stadia were allowed to be incorporated, and that allowed Wednesday to, in theory, satisfy the rules. Then there was an appeal by the EFL, and Sheffield Wednesday had a points deduction on the back of that, because I think they tried to backdate the sale into an earlier year. But there's a company called Sheffield 3 who now appear to be the owners of Hillsborough. And it turns out that, yes, they've bought the stadium for £60 million, in theory, about 4 years ago, but they've not paid for it. They still owe £42 million in instalments. And at the same time, they're charging rent to Wednesday. So you've got this somewhat circular arrangement in which the owners of the stadium are paying money to the tenant, who is then paying the owners back in the form of rent. And I think this is just indicative of how much a pickle we've got into with regards to financial fair play. The sale of stadiums was prohibited. Then the rules were changed in 2016 by the Premier League. The EFL decided at the time it was going to adopt the same rules as the Premier League. So, my understanding from talking to quite a few people involved, saying, "Well, why on earth do you let this through? This is nuts." It said we just didn't check the small print enough. It was cock up rather than conspiracy, right. And that's led to all of these issues with Wednesday, Derby, Villa, Reading, Birmingham, and others, and quite a few of those clubs have ended up with points deductions and sanctions and so on. So it does show what a mess we are in. I think you've got to give credit to Trevor Birch and so on at the EFL. They are trying to improve things, but it's it's a bit whack-a-mole in terms of dealing with the creative nature of some of these transactions.
In my attempt to add a bit of mystery to that story, Kieran, I don't think we've actually mentioned the figure that the annual rent is.
Yes, that was very good. Yes, they're paying £2.8 million, right. which is quite a lot, because it's effectively the same as what West Ham are paying for the London Stadium, and the London Stadium's got a capacity of just over 60,000, and it's in London, where you'd expect rentals to be a lot higher. So either Sheffield Wednesday are overpaying for the rent, and if they've sold it for 60 million on a yield basis, I've been watching Dion Dublin. The Baroness has been watching Dion Dublin, and she's very good on yields on property. I go, why are you watching these programs about people you'd never met buying houses? I just don't get it myself. But she says, Dion and yields, he's a bit of a genius on.
Yields he's good at. Stairs he's terrible at. He's just still constantly baffled by stairs. There's a staircase. What's that for? It's to get you from one floor to the other, Dion.
Well, you can't sell it to a Dalek, can you?
No, that's true. Yeah, Daleks can go upstairs now, Kieran. It's unfortunate.
Oh, have they? They moved on.
Unfortunately, for a lot of B-list comedians, Daleks are now able to go upstairs.
Right.
It is a strange situation, Kieran. I mean, it reminds me of that wonderful Laurel and Hardy sketch. Where's the money for the rent? Is that the money you gave to me to give to her to give to him? Because it's just like it's like you say. They're paying money back to themselves to pay the instalments. It's a very odd situation, and that's a lot of rent. We've got two big Everton stories, Kieran. 3, if you count how bad they were against Spurs. And first of all, Everton said now that they don't need a loan from the council anymore to build their new stadium. Why is that?
The council were going to give them a grant, and it said Everton have put out effectively a press release in the last 48 hours to say I think they were looking to get about £30 million from the council, and that's not going to go ahead. Now, whether in relation to very recent events and Everton's relationship with Alisher Usmanov, the council have decided that it would be best that they weren't seen to be financially funding an organisation with links, and Everton, they've severed their links as far as they're concerned with Usmanov, and they said this took place in January and so on. But it does still beg the question as to where is the money going to come from to provide funding for the new stadium. It's going to cost. It's estimated in the region of £500 million. And I think that was initial estimates. Since then, steel prices have gone up, fuel prices have gone up, labour costs have gone up. Farhad Mashiri, the owner, has said he's going to put some money in, but where's the rest of it going to come from? Because banks look at risk, and sort of tying into what you were saying with regards to Everton's performance. They've only won once away this season. It was at the Amex, where they absolutely steamrolled us. They're not in great shakes as far as their league position is concerned. So it is a cause for concern. There's a fourth story in relation to Everton, in that I think one of the newspapers is running today's Wednesday, that they are in potential breach of financial fair play. If you take a look at their accounts for the last 3 years, they've lost £260 million. You're only allowed to lose 105 for FFP. Now, again, there's a little bit there's adjustments left, right, and centre, but they're going to be right at the very limit here. And we've not seen their accounts yet for 2021. So I think people are starting to get genuinely nervous. Would that involve a points deduction this season? Well, we're now into the second week of March. If they don't put their counts out for a few more weeks, that will delay things. If the Premier League decided to charge them, I think they just push back, and try to knock this story down the road as much as possible to avoid any points deductions this season, because clearly it would be, it could be fairly critical from their perspective. So that's where we are with Everton with regards to that stadium issue, and their finances weren't great to begin with. And the council not giving the money, I think the council has made a conscious decision. The council did have, shall we say, some Everton influence in terms of people in high positions in the council historically, and they're no longer perhaps in the same executive decision-making roles as before.
It's interesting, Kieran, and worrying at the same time. It doesn't matter who you support. You can't deny that Everton are one of the great traditional teams in English football. A wonderful past. We grew up in the 70s with players like Joe Royle. Then that Lineker generation was a great Everton side. they've slipped away from Liverpool currently. But what worries me is we're seeing the same sort of mood music slowly building up as we saw at Bury, at Wigan, at Derby, and this is by far the biggest club we've talked about that are having issues like this. That suddenly, 6 or 7 weeks ago, there was no Everton story at all, and then suddenly there's a lot of little pebbles. Each week goes by, there's another little indication, and their sponsorship deal with Kazoo is going to end after this season. I don't know who's ending it, but if they do get relegated, I mean, that's going to affect next year's sponsorship money massively, which isn't going to help either, is it?
Absolutely correct. I think Kazoo deal it's estimated to be worth in the region of 8 to 9 million. You're going to get a tenth of that in the Championship,
Wow.
regardless of who the sponsor is,
Wow.
Because you're not generating global eyeballs in the way. Everton will be the biggest fish if the worst happens in the Championship next season. But even so, it doesn't turn into numbers of viewers in terms of the global audience that they have.
Oh, but I mean, they would be on every week, wouldn't they? They'd be the Sky Championship game pretty much every week if they did go down. I'm not suggesting they will. So would that not make the deal a bit more attractive?
A bit more, yes, but if you take a look at the Everton coming to town will be a big issue, but I think you only get £10,000 from in the TV deal if you're the away team and you're chosen for live broadcast. Evertonians will be watching regardless because they support their team. It's just the same. We've both watched our teams when they've been a bit bobbins, to put it mildly, But that's an irrelevance, because it's our team and you go to watch it. It's trying to get big numbers in terms of TV audiences, especially overseas, where there's lots of very lucrative commercial deals to be signed.
So was the Kazoo deal always going to end after this season?
It could have been renewed, so there was a natural break. Normally, if you've got a good relationship with sponsors, these things do get renewed. And it could be that, I think Kazoo is part of a much broader car organisation, and if it could go to another one of the arms of that, in which case it won't be too much of an issue. If not, where does this leave Everton? I think the club have said historically over the last year or so that they don't particularly want to have connections with the gambling industry, which is to be encouraged. I think we've seen Paul Merson come out with more comments today that he finds it difficult to watch football because of this constant reminder of gambling, and if you've got an addiction to that, it's that temptation. It's a bit like the drug dealer, hanging outside your local pub, saying, "I've got some gear, and you're trying to keep away from it. I think it will be challenging for Everton, but as you say, it's a famous club. It's a very historic club, and they've got that in their favour. Whether that works with sponsors, you're never sure, because many of the sponsors simply don't care about the club. They're just interested in what viewing figures do you normally generate.
I don't know much about the historic finances of Everton, Kieran, but it strikes me that for many years, under the stewardship of Bill Kenwright, everyone knew that Everton weren't full of money, that Bill Kenwright, he wasn't a billionaire owner. They had to live within their means to an extent. But it seems to me, Kieran, that their problems have got far worse since they've been bought by somebody who apparently has got a lot of money. It's only the last 2 years that they seem to be getting into such a pickle. Yet when he first came in, the new owner, it was with a fanfare of trumpets. It's going to be a new ground. We're going to get into the Champions League, and it's just things are just getting worse. It seems to me.
Yeah, it's textbook Viv Nicholson, in the sense that the wage bill has doubled in the course of 5 years, but the revenues haven't doubled. The club has spent over £500 million on players. They've recouped 200 million of that back, but there's the net spend over that period is far in excess. And Everton didn't used to spend money they didn't have because they didn't have the capacity to do so. Bill Kenwright ran a tight ship out of financial necessity, and that's not a criticism of him. He the industry in which he works. He's done well by the standards of the likes of you and me. But he was not in the same league as the ultra high net worth individuals that are now owning clubs, and Farhad Moshiri has far more money behind him.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Bill Kenwright is involved in musical theatre, and for those of you who aren't in their late 50s, very very late 50s,
as in 60s,
Viv Nicholson, who I believe we mentioned before, she won the football pools back in the early 60s, and when asked what she was going to do with the money, so I'm going to spend. Which she did. She had a wonderful 6 months, followed by a very miserable 7 or 8 years. City Football Group. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So Man City fans know there's 2 Man City stories, but the first one is that City Football Group, which owns Manchester City, has published its latest accounts. And now I presume, Kieran, that the clubs in the group also publish separate accounts.
Yes, so this is the City Football Group own New York City, Melbourne City. There's a team in Mumbai. There's a team in Uruguay. 44% of Girona. There's a Belgian team, and so on. I think what's intriguing, and what has caused the occasional eyebrow to shift in a northerly direction, is that when Manchester City published their accounts, they made a profit of £10 million for 2021, which very, given we're operating in a closed down season, pretty impressive. City Football Group has lost 71 million. The previous year it lost well over 100 million, and it's racked up huge losses. And what the cynics say, and as you know, I'm not a cynic.
No, indeed.
Is this because some of the costs are being parked elsewhere in the City Football Group, and therefore they're not going through the accounts of Manchester City, and therefore it's allowing a bit of gaming of the system. Now, there's no evidence to support such allegations, but you would have thought that the City Football Group's overall objective, especially as they've got they do have some American investors, and they've got Chinese investors as well, is to make ultimately to make some form of profit.
But I get what you're saying, Kim. But Man City are the team making the money for City Football Group, aren't they? The team in Mumbai and the team in Melbourne aren't likely to be posting big profits.
Yeah. Not posting big profits is one thing, but they must be posting some pretty big losses.
Okay.
And you would have thought that they would have had a break-even model, given that Manchester City is very much the mothership, and let's face it, the football they are playing, and we've both been watching football for the same amount of time, is the closest thing to ballet that I've ever seen on a football pitch. It is art.
We're playing them on Monday, so
we've got them Saturday week, I think. So not going to be good.
But is it surely, Kieran, clever people like you and Swiss Ramble? Could you not compare the accounts of all the clubs in the City Group and see how they match up together against the City Group's general accounts?
Yeah, and they all do tie in. It just seems that Manchester City gets an awful lot of the revenue,
right?
And perhaps not quite the same big proportion of the costs.
I see. I sort of see. And there's the City story, the second one, which I should have given a spoiler alert earlier instead of actually getting ahead of myself. The new crypto sponsor is offering a product that's banned to UK consumers.
Yes, this is what's known as derivatives trading, and it is an extremely highly risky investment approach. And therefore it's been banned by the UK regulators. So yeah, City have a crypto sponsor. This story came up from Joey Durso in the Athletic, and Joey is Mr. Crypto Sherlock Holmes. He's always going into this type of stuff, and fair play to him, because it's not at the glamour end of journalism, but Joey really does get stuck in. And yeah, for those people not familiar with derivatives, what you're doing is you're looking at things such as estimating what the future price of a cryptocurrency is going to be in 3 months' time, and then buying it at your estimated price. And if it's higher than that, you'll make money, and if it's lower than that, you'll lose money. But as we know, the value of cryptocurrencies is very volatile. And the concern with derivatives is that you only have to put down a small deposit now on a bet which effectively is going to crystallize in, say, a month or 3 months' time. So this sponsor says, well, yeah, we don't target UK customers, and Manchester City have fans elsewhere in the world where this product isn't banned, but it doesn't look too good, and I think City have had a few own goals in relation to some of their collaborations with partners in the last few months. And then, for a club that normally conducts itself extremely well, I think they're being a bit slapdash here. Why go chasing a few extra quid from a sponsor without doing proper due diligence?
Now, interestingly, there's an element of gambling and risk in this next story. And I think this is a fascinating story, because Wycombe Wanderers are offering lifetime season tickets. Now, we've seen clubs in the past offer 3-year, 5-year season tickets, but this is an interesting development on that, isn't it, Kieran?
Yes. We had Rob Cohig on the show a few months ago, and Rob is very keen to embrace new methodologies. And what Wycombe are effectively doing here is that they're giving people it's a bit like gym membership, or a bit like your Netflix subscription. You pay a monthly amount, and it's not the same as a season ticket. If you or I, let's say we renew our season ticket for 2022-23, and then 3 months into the season, for whatever reason, I can't pay it anymore, or I want to terminate the relationship. The club, I can get offended and on my high horse about my club as much as anybody can. So something happens, and instead of walking out the ground and say, right, well, that was a right shower of rubbish, I'm never going to watch them again, which I say on quite a regular basis. This time I actually mean it. But under those circumstances, I would have signed a contract for the season ticket for the remainder of the season. And therefore, I would have had to pay up through the direct debit scheme. And we're quite good at Brighton. They've got an interest-free direct debit over, I think, sort of 8 or 9 months, which works quite well for people. But you'd still have to go and pay up for the remainder of the season. You might decide to emigrate. You might decide, you might fall on health reasons. Doesn't matter what it is. But what this deal appears to say is, give us 30 days notice and you're out. So, in exactly the same way as you can cancel your Netflix subscription. I think you have to go and put down a year's deposit to begin with, and then you pay on your monthly basis going forward. So it is trying to just get fans to tie into, we've got our monthly phone contracts, we've got our Netflix and Amazon Prime contracts and BT and so on, to move on to that as a means of having the relationship with the club, as opposed to that conscious decision at the start of each season to renew the season ticket.
But is it similar to those? I know Palace talked about doing 3-year season tickets once, and we've talked about it earlier in the pod. Because the idea is that you pay a price for a ticket for 3 to 5 years, and you could be in the Premier League after those 3 years. So you're getting Premier League football for Championship money. Is this a similar thing? Will this be a fixed monthly fee or a fixed annual fee?
I think it's a monthly fee, and I think the aim is to you just pay over 12 months. So you're paying during the summer when there is no football, you're paying in the winter when there is football, but by spreading it over 12 months and just having it as a rolling contract, as opposed to a formal, do you want to renew or not? They're just trying to sort of move football away from our traditional relationship with the sport.
Well, I think other clubs are going to have to be looking at that, Kieran. If you look at, I mean, this is a big discussion amongst my friends. If you look at energy bills in particular, they're so huge now. I think there are going to be a lot of football fans at every level who are going to have to be saying, I can either pay for a season ticket or I can pay this month's gas and electric bill.
Yeah.
And I think clubs are going to have to be a bit more imaginative about how they get fans into the ground. So I think Wycombe have done very well. And another team that have done very well, Luton Town, are in the playoff mix in the Championship, which is astonishing given the size of their budget. But they've revealed that their revenue fell by more than £2 million because of COVID. And given the budget they're operating on in the first place, that's a big loss.
Yes, it is. And again, we're quite fond of Luton. We've had Gary Sweet on the show. Gary, first of all, he's a fan of Luton. And it's always good when it becomes very clear as soon as you start talking to somebody that the person is a fan of the club first and happens to be in a position to be an owner second. Luton did have a hit. They've got one of the smallest budgets as far as the Championship is concerned, but still, through having a strategy in terms of player recruitment, they've got a good manager in Nathan Jones, that they are up there at the top end of the table, and it proves that you don't have to gamble the house in order to get to the Premier League. And I don't like saying nice things about Palace, but Palace did the same in 2013. They were promoted, but Steve Parish didn't gamble with the club's future in trying to get there. We've seen that with other clubs. Blackpool have managed it, Wigan have managed it, Huddersfield have managed it, so it can be done. So the constant narrative that we get from some club owners is that I had to go and I had to go and effectively put everything on red on the roulette wheel and gamble with the club's future. It doesn't hold true. It's about spending money well rather than spending money full stop. And what Luton have got, they've got a fan base that buys into this. They're not going to be spending a lot of money as far as the transfer market is concerned. But they still spend a few million as opposed to tens of millions. And on the back of that, they're doing extremely well. So fair play to them.
I tell you what, Kieran, if Luton do get promoted, there's going to be a few Arsenal fans and Chelsea fans and Man United fans having a massive culture shock when they get to Kenilworth Road.
Yes.
Just trying to get into it, just trying to decide which house you have to go through to get into. I was the last time we were there, I think it was a League Cup game. It's just the most bizarre thing. We're all walking down the road and there's a family of children waving at us, all dressed as Thunderbirds. Which was it's just one of those. Thunderbirds hadn't been on telly for 20 years, but there's always little kids dressed as Thunderbirds. It's one of those things you just shrug, wave back, and move on. It's but yeah, I'd love to. Although there's still a part of me, older fans still have a bit of a problem with Luton because they were. The plastic pitch for a start off, plus their chairman at the time was Thatcher's right-hand man when it came to introducing membership schemes for football fans, etc. But that's all in the past, Kieran, as indeed are most of our stories and anecdotes. And our final story today, Chelsea women's team lost 1.6 million despite recorded revenues of 5.3 million. Again, is this COVID?
I don't really think it is impacted significantly by COVID. And the reason why I say that is that if you take a look at women's football, there's not many clubs that produce detailed accounts, but Chelsea's, there was a reasonable amount of information there. The vast majority of the money in women's football, as far as clubs publishing their 2021 accounts is concerned, is coming from commercial sponsorship arrangements and so on. So they weren't bringing in a lot of money through the turnstiles to begin with. So therefore, they didn't lose a huge amount on the back of COVID. But what I think this does indicate is a significant change at the elite level of women's football in the WSL in terms of player wages. And we're now seeing clubs such as Chelsea and Manchester City's women's team also publish their accounts. The wages of the WSL teams, and this isn't a criticism at all. They're now higher than most League Two clubs, and they're also higher than some League One clubs as well. So the WSL is attracting international talent. And if you want to attract the best talent in the world, you're going to have to go and pay accordingly. And the way, the costs are going up faster than the revenues, and if that is the case, then these clubs are going to be losing money. Can they cover those losses? Well, ultimately, they're being funded by where and who. So that could mean in the next few years, will there be the same level of expenditure on the women's team? That will come down to the culture of the new owners.
As you know, Kieran, and as our listeners know, because Guy's asked us to remind them every week recently, our first ever live Price of Football show is taking place at Plough Lane on the 24th of March. There is now officially one ticket left, so if you're quick, you can click on the link. I think so, roughly one. It was 3 now. It must be 1 now, surely. It's worth doing it just because I think it's the only way you'll be able to see a photograph of Kieran on his way to the cup final in what year is it? 83.
83, yes.
It's worth seriously. It's worth a tenner just to see that photograph, because we're not putting it up on any social media. And if you can't come along but you'd like to donate some money to us anyway, that would be very kind of you. You can do that by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. If you have questions for our Monday questions pod, then please email them to questions@priceoffootball.com. And in the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, as always, listeners, thank you very much for all the support of the show. We're genuinely excited at the prospect of getting a chance to meet some of you, and we're going to put on a damn good show. We are. We've already had a planning meeting, and it's almost as exciting as a jar of Marmite. And can it possibly get better than that? So if you want to support the show, Patreon is one method. Another way, and this comes from producer Guy, is just to go to your apps which you use to download podcasts, and if you can give us a review, it helps. There's some sort of algorithm that if you give us 5 stars, it helps us in the charts. And I think it's fair to say we're punching above our weight for what is a niche show in a niche area of the game. So we do appreciate that, and you can write whatever you want. You can say you'd rather have the show presented by Luther Vandross and Luther Blissett, and it wouldn't make a blind bit of difference to us as far as the ratings are concerned, but it put a smile on our face, and I'd listen to that. I'd listen to that on a Saturday evening. Yeah, I think the two silky voices would definitely impress the Baroness as well.
I like Luther Blissett. I have no opinion on Luther Vandross. I've never met him. I don't think I've ever... Yeah, go on.
I met Luther Blissett 3 weeks ago.
Did you? Of course.
Yeah, Vicarage Road. And he was absolutely fantastic. An absolute credit to the club. And he was funny and engaging and clearly loves the game and Watford FC. Fantastic bloke. Absolutely fantastic bloke.
He's also very funny about the time a while back now when an Italian anarchist group adopted his name as their nom de plume. They called themselves the Luther Blissett Group and went around causing mayhem in Italy for a while, which he's very funny about. And you do realise, of course, Kieran, that now there will be many people turning up at Plough Lane with jars of Marmite for you.
That's very kind of them.
Yeah, actually, we might add even more value to that live show, Kieran. Maybe we could do a live demonstration of the cheese and Guinness soup.
I'll see if I can get the Baroness to make up a batch before we go. And one other thing, folks, it's there's no dress code as such. But if you want to wear your shirts to show that we represent the whole family of football, then that would be great as well.
Yes, of course it would. Yeah, and the more obscure the shirt, the better. Absolutely, because we're both a bugger for a kit. That's what happens when you get to our age. It's football shirts and Marmite that start turning you on. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.